March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Medfield Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen or view this meeting while in progress may do so by following the instructions on the agenda and meeting notice that was posted on the town's website. As a side comment relative to our policies and procedures, and I think this recent announcement from the state, what we would ask is as people talk, if you are not on video like me or many other people have called in, if you would simply identify who you are before you start speaking so that people who might listen to this recording later will know who's talking. Thank you. Christine, you want to start this or?
So I think one of the first things we need to talk about is the date of the town election. Obviously, as you all know, I've been talking to each of you. I've been talking to the warrant committee. You know, my staff's been listening to me for about the last 72 hours, talk about it nonstop. You know, as a political science major, as a, what I consider myself a government nerd, it kills me to even be talking about the postponement of an election. But I think given the governor's order, he signed the bill yesterday, S608, allowing for the postponement of the election. I think at this time we have to consider postponing the town election, which was scheduled for next Monday.
Chris, isn't there an ultimate outside date of June 30 in that postponement?
Correct. A lot of the towns have not set a date, but I believe when you read the legislation that the governor signed yesterday, you have to set a date. You can't leave it open-ended. And I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving it open-ended as well.
Yeah, my concern is that things aren't going to get better between now and then. And so that I guess I kind of default with just going ahead with it because I think if things are going to get worse before they get better. And I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm not sure that it'll be better before June 30.
I think Pete, I agree with you, but my concern is because we don't have enough absentee ballots for everyone who would want to vote by absentee ballot, you're kind of saying to people, well, if you want to vote, you got to take the chance of coming out, particularly for seniors or people who are in a vulnerable population, and voting or passing up on the chance to vote. And so I think if we had 500 absentee ballots and we could tell everyone, look, you get your request for an absentee ballot in by Monday and mail it back, we'll cover you. My concern is, I think, Christine, what do we have? Only 50 left?
We only have 50 left. We only requested 100 absentee ballots. They were requested before this happened. And normally for an uncontested town election, we don't have that many absentee ballots usually requested. Obviously, we anticipate more.
I'm a person who was elected at one municipal election where 87 people voted because there were no contested seats. I spent the day worrying that the high school kids would think about taking over the election. But I'm guessing that there won't be very many people that will vote. I think if we publicize the ability to vote by absentee ballot, then we'll get more, but I don't know how many more we would get. I think your point's a good one, Mike. I didn't realize that we had a shortage of absentee ballots. So I think that's something to consider.
Yeah, as I thought about this, I mean, kind of my thinking about when to reschedule it would be to reschedule it at a time when we can have an absentee ballot for everyone who wants to vote by absentee ballot and encourage people to all vote by absentee ballot. And then we could put in, I think we have to conduct, we're not allowed to conduct the whole election by mail. So we have to have an in-person component, but you could then have kind of an extreme distancing approach to the people who insist on voting in person. You could have one precinct, one person at a time going in. You could separate it out so nobody actually has to be near each other. But if you had enough time to print the ballots, then nobody would actually have to go and they could still exercise their right to vote. And I understand that it's an uncontested election, but I think we still have to respect the fact that the people who vote in uncontested elections. We want to make sure they have an opportunity to do so and write people in or do whatever else they're going to do in that election. So I don't think we can, as a practical matter, you're right, Pete, you might not have that many people voting, but I think we still have to give them a fair chance to do it without having to come and put themselves at risk.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Can you folks hear me?
Hi, Mark.
This is Mark. Hi. So I've got the legislation in front of me, and it has more liberal provisions for absentee voting going forward, and also to the earlier point, you do need to set a date certain as part of a continuation if you were to do that.
Hey, Mark, this is Gus. While you're on, I had previously communicated to Christine, Mike, and Pete that because I am the selectman that's up for election somehow, or even though it's uncontested and even though this is an emergency, it seemed like I should stay out of this discussion. I guess not because there's driving issues for it right now, but it just felt weird for me to be commenting on when an election should take place when I'm in it. Are there any restrictions that I need to be mindful of? Am I thinking about the right way, or should I be thinking
No,
about
I think you are, because hypothetically, somebody could write somebody else in.
Correct.
So
Okay.
if you're strictly talking about the date, and, it's a thin line. If you don't absolutely have to participate, my advice would be don't.
So my preference for sure would be that Mike and Pete reach agreement in this discussion. Mark, I'm being silent on opinions just for that reason. It sounds like as far as dates go, I could probably comment.
Well, I mean, with the way it works historically, it's an all or nothing. Either you're conflicted or you're not. So these aren't actually, these are rather unique circumstances here. But to the extent it seems to me that this could be resolved with the other two without your participation, my advice would be don't.
Okay.
Do not participate.
All right. Then that explains my relative silence.
Purpose.
I will note in the minutes, Gus, that you have recused yourself from the discussion.
Okay.
So I guess, Mike, then the question becomes, how far out do we want to push it? Do we want to push it to the warm weather so that if we had to, we could have the polls even set up outside?
Well, I guess the question is a question for our printing company. I mean, how long would it take, Christine, to get more absentee ballots printed?
Well, that's further complicated because they are following the governor's stay-at-home advisory. They're a non-essential business as far as they are concerned right now, and they're not printing ballots. I have a call into our delegation to see if how we can fix that, get additional ballots printed. I would suggest, honestly, we're going to need a good few weeks to get this done. And I don't think we should be having anybody come out during a stay-at-home advisory to vote as well. I think it's a conflicting message to send. So I would say at a minimum, you're going to need at least 2 weeks. And I would probably push for 30 days so we can make sure we have enough ballots on hand.
It's Mark again. To work at it backwards, assuming you're proposing to continue the annual town meeting, do you want to have the election before the town meeting or after? And then set one day and work the other.
I think we should have it before. I mean, the town charter contemplates that the election happen and then the town meeting happen. There's supposed to be an election for the moderator before the next annual town meeting. So my view would be we should have it before the town meeting.
I agree.
So if we did go out 30 days, that would be before the scheduled date for the town meeting.
So we were talking today, I think Nick had a great suggestion in that we moved the election to Monday, May 4th, which was supposed to be town meeting. That date means something to people. It's on their radar screen that the town was doing something on the 4th. How do you feel about that, Scott?
That makes sense to me. That was kind of the parameters that I was looking at, would be to push that about a month, the election. So that would, and I think to do it on a day where we already have an identified day for, the town meeting would make sense to use that as the day we held the town election.
And then what date should we use for the annual town meeting?
So let's talk about it, looking to with the end in mind as we kind of push, how late could we do it? And still be able to address all of the, the responsibilities from a budgetary perspective and from a warrant article perspective in order to be ready as we head into, FY21.
So there's already, this is Mark again, there's already statutory authority in the Board of Selectmen to continue or postpone an annual town meeting as long as all the business is concluded before June 30th. Some of the remedial legislation now is making that even more flexible, but you already have that ability to push it into later June. Under normal circumstances with vacations and the summer and all, you wouldn't want to do that, but so you can talk about backing it up from there, I guess. Once the date is set, if this continues, there will be further legislative flexibility based on what's pending or passed that would allow the moderator, in consultation with the selectmen, to continue the matter further. And they're also looking at municipal relief similar to what cities have, that, as I mentioned the other night, they would authorize you to proceed on the prior year's budget on a month-to-month basis without having concluded the town meeting action on the current fiscal year's budget.
So Mark, just to be clear on that, the current status of that is that I believe the governor submitted the legislation that would have empowered the towns to effectively have a continuing resolution authority to extend our town meeting out past the beginning of the next fiscal year. But the status on that right now is the legislature has not approved it.
It was just filed yesterday, and to confuse things further, just before I got on this call, I was checking my emails, and one of my colleagues indicated that there is an additional, and incidentally, that legislation is House number 4580, but there's now apparently a separate standalone bill that the governor has filed that goes further with various municipal relief. So at any rate, the legislature is taking up the bill that was filed yesterday and or this new legislation that was just filed. So, and they're expected to act on what was filed yesterday by Thursday.
So in case some of you haven't read that original legislation the governor submitted, one of the things that caught my attention on it was that the requirement is that the monthly allocation be not less than 1/12 of the prior year's budget, just in terms of the mechanics of how it would work. So effectively, it would be a more or less a flat budget moving forward for however many months if we were to go in that direction, however many more months we took to get to a town meeting. At a minimum, it would be a level funded continuing resolution.
Mark, under the legislation, if we do postpone the town meeting, do we have to set a date for that, or could we postpone it and then with a date to be determined?
That remains to be seen with what the legislature does with these pending bills. There is a procedure in here. Basically, what they're doing is General Laws Chapter 39 deals with town meetings, and Section 10A was added within the last couple of years, dealing with natural disasters and as a result of. And that gave the authority to the moderator. Now they're just expanding that language to include public health emergencies. It is to a time, date, and place certain at a town meeting previously called pursuant to a warrant. So if the warrant's already out, you can proceed, and it's shall not exceed 30 days at the moment. But again, people could bring up the fact, people in the legislature, and that process may decide it needs to be more flexibility than that. But at least as submitted, that's what it was. The moderator would have the authority to, in consultation with the Board of Selectmen, Public Health and Safety, to recess and continue to a time, date, and place certain within 30 days, not to exceed 30 days. There would be more reason probably to push it out as far into June as you can to buy yourself the flexibility to push it out further if you have to, the way it is now.
Because we haven't sent out the warrant, we haven't posted the warrant yet. And that's a limiting factor as well, because we should not, at a minimum, we'll have to schedule it at a time when we're going to be able to send out the warrant with the same amount of lead time that we would have for an ordinary annual town meeting. And that's why, even though it's May 5th, I think we really have to make this decision now, because we would be printing and sending the warrant. And it sounds like from Christine that that may not even be a possibility if the printing company is not available. I guess if we have the option under the existing legislation to defer the town meeting further, then we don't sounds like we don't necessarily have to set a date, Mark. Am I hearing that correctly?
No, 30, the existing on the books, Chapter 39, Section 9, allows the Board of Selectmen to defer the date already, to postpone the date of an annual town meeting, basically.
But Mark, was there a limit on how far? Did I hear you say 30 days?
30 days.
I said two things. One, I was talking about, hold on, let me just get the language in 9. All right. Selectmen may delay the annual town meeting. Such delayed annual town meeting shall complete its business on or before June 30th. So that's the existing statute.
Okay.
So you have to set a date that would allow you to get your business done before June 30th. That's your authority right now in terms of setting that date. Once you've set the date and the warrant gets out, then you get into whatever the legislature gives you now for authority with the several pending bills in terms of the moderator, probably in consultation with the Board of Selectmen. This right now is the Board of Selectmen's authority to set a date later than the charter calls.
Which we have done before, Mark, right? Was it
Right.
2008 or
Oh yeah,
2009?
there was a number of years, several years where the legislative, the budget was such that town meetings were delayed to get a better handle on what was happening from the state. So that part's not unusual.
I remember having, I think it was the town meeting in June, and it was ungodly hot. And I remember thinking to myself, I'd never postpone it into June again.
And definitely not in the auditorium.
Never in the auditorium.
That was a June town meeting, some of you may remember.
So Pete, if social distancing is still in effect, we use the turf field in June.
Don't kid you, that was actually done. I think when they were talking, getting authority for one of the gambling casinos, they actually had an outdoor thing in a tent because of the number of people that showed up. Was it not Medfield? It was somewhere down the southeast.
Let me ask another just practical question. If we did defer the town meeting, would we tend to stick with the Monday? I'm just looking for target dates here. Would we tend to stick with the Monday convention that's the day we hold the town meeting?
I would think so.
I think so.
Because if I'm looking at it, that probably says if we were to defer it and you have to be done by the 30th, we'd probably target either the 15th or the 22nd of June.
Yeah, and if I could express a preference for the 15th, I'm supposed to have foot surgery on the 18th and be non-weight bearing for the next 6 weeks. So I would prefer the 15th if I were to make that call.
And the 22nd, I would agree with Scott. The 22nd also starts to get toward whatever it's going to mean for the end of the school year and summer this
Correct.
year.
Right,
If that is a relevant date, you could get there, although there's obviously the possibility of school being extended longer if the kids do end up going back. So I think the 15th sounds right to me.
Sounds good to me too.
Yeah, I leaned in the same direction. The only counter argument I had in my head was the argument that if we needed to give the legislature more time to extend the authority, but my guess is whatever the legislature does or doesn't do, they'll have done or not done it by the 15th of June.
Right.
Correct.
And I think the reality is if we're still under the current regime, we probably will be deferring it beyond the 15th as well and opting for the month-to-month budget thing and
Right.
having the town meeting in September. I mean, I think this buys us time, gives us a chance to get the warrant out by the middle of May. If things are returning to normal or if there's going to be some other procedural change as to how we'll run town meeting to avoid all of us being together, there's more time for that. But I think if we're still in a significant lockdown, we'll probably have to take advantage of the new legislation and defer it until the end of the summer.
I agree.
So I think at this point, you need to take two votes. You need to vote to move the election to Monday, May 4th, and you need to take a vote to move the annual town meeting to Monday, June 15th, pending any more discussion.
I would move the annual election, municipal election in Medfield from its current date to May 4.
I second.
I abstain.
I would just simply include by reference the new legislation that authorizes that.
It'll be attached to the minutes as well.
Okay.
Incidentally, does that have to be a roll call vote? This is a remote meeting.
It does.
Mr. Marcucci,
Yes.
Mr. Murby,
Recused.
Mr. Peterson, yes.
Thank
I would
you.
also then move that we change the date of the annual town meeting to June 15, 2020.
I second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Murby,
Aye.
Mr. Marcucci,
Yes, aye.
me, yes.
Thank you.
And that's as provided in existing legislation 39, section 9.
All right.
Okay.
Then I just want to go over some of where we are in state of operations currently. As you know, the governor issued the emergency stay-at-home order effective at noon today. Currently, our police and fire are updating their staffing schedule. We are still operating 24/7 under normal operating procedure. The DPW has instituted a rotating staff schedule. This is to minimize contact and practice social distancing. We are trying to keep them as separated as possible. The town hall staff has identified essential and non-essential personnel. We're on a rotating shift schedule. I want to emphasize that even though all of our town buildings are closed to the public, we're either staffed in person or remotely during regular business hours. We are available by phone, email, Twitter, whatever you'd like. We're here to answer questions.
Christine, about how many people are in the town hall physically now?
Right now, I have approximately 7.
Good.
2 of those are rotating, but we're keeping
Yeah.
it less than 10.
Yep. Good.
And that will probably drop down a little bit after today. I think we're going down to 5. I want to just remind everybody the transfer station is now open on Sundays from 9 to 4. We're trying to spread out the number of people at the transfer station throughout the week. I apologize to everybody. We've had to suspend taking mattresses. This is apparently a great opportunity with everybody home to clean out your basements and your spare bedrooms. This is just temporary. We will bring it back. We're just at a point where we can't physically take any more at this point. We're trying to keep basic operations up and running. And we're also asking everybody to hold their swap materials. We won't be able to take that until the swap is actually open. And we're going to delay the opening of that past May 1st, but I don't have a date yet. I want to thank everybody for their patience at the transfer station this past weekend. I know we had a lot of people rotating through there. The staff at the transfer station said everybody was very amenable to staying the 6 to 10 feet away from each other. It slowed things down a little bit, but we were able to get everybody through. Just a reminder that our playground equipment, our athletic fields are closed. That was also mentioned in the governor's order that he issued last night. As of yesterday, the building department is only conducting inspections on an emergency and case-by-case basis. We are accepting alternative methods of field inspections, and you can contact the building commissioner if you have a question about that. We have some concern about proper social distancing, sending our inspectors into people's homes, as well as infecting our inspectors as well. But anybody who has a question, the building department is staffed. Give them a call and they can respond to you about your question.
Christine, one minor point. I'm almost hesitant to do it because I'm not encouraging people to defy the governor, but I believe the governor's stay-at-home edict is an advisory, not an order. Is that correct?
Correct. It is an advisory.
Okay, and I'm asking that not so people have a way to ignore it, but I'm mainly doing it so that people aren't calling the police looking for enforcement actions for other people that they think are violating stuff. Please go along with what the governor's asking for here.
Thank you. We have been fielding some of those questions, and we are trying to address those as best we can. Most of our complaints have been about people congregating at athletic fields, and we're trying to address that best we can. We recognize that people are trying to get outside, and while we encourage everybody to go outside, we're encouraging you to practice social distancing as recommended by the Board of Health.
Just as an aside, because I know we've had some issues with adults complaining about students or kids congregating. I did a totally non-scientific random set of drives around town this weekend, and I was actually impressed at the number of young adults that we had who were congregating at least 10 feet apart from one another. So for whatever problems we've had, there are a lot of young people here in town that are paying attention. They are getting together, but they're doing it in a safer fashion than I've been hearing.
Good to know. I think one of the things I want to stress is that all of our updates and important information can be found on our dedicated website. We're posting information there as it becomes available. I know that everybody is being inundated with information from multiple sources, so we are trying to keep that website updated. It may not be on a daily basis as we issue these restrictions, but as soon as you make a recommendation, or the Board of Health recommendation is they're being put on the website as soon as we make those orders or recommendations. We also ask that you follow our social media sites, Facebook and Twitter. That's where most of our information is going out immediately before it gets on the website. And again, sign up for our new alert system, and you can find that on the website as well. There is an additional vote I need you to take, and this is one that I thought of last night after the governor issued the advisory. Currently, the back parking lot is where we post all of our meetings. I wouldn't want anybody to defy the governor's advisory to go out just to look at a meeting notice. I would like you to vote temporarily to allow the website to be our official meeting notification site until this is over and until the governor's advisory is lifted. Or in fact, you change your vote. But currently, with the staffing level at the town hall, it is easier for those of us that are working remotely to get those meeting notices posted on the website rather than come to the town hall to have them put on. Nick looked today, you can see the time and date it's posted, so that if it's not an emergency meeting, we'll be following the 48-hour notice under the open meeting law, and you can check that through the website.
I would make that motion.
Well, Mark, any comments on ability to do that?
I haven't checked the AG's regs to determine the changes back and forth. You're free to post on electronically anyway, so
it is
not official.
It is allowed now. What will happen is once you make the vote to change that, Marion, who is assistant town clerk, will notify the Division of Local Government that we are now utilizing the website as our official meeting posting site and not the back parking lot. We will continue.
Okay, but have you checked?
Yep.
Have you checked in terms of changing it back at a later date, what the process is for that? Because
we would have another vote. No, we would just take another vote and move it back.
Okay. I mean, it would make sense, and I would think there'd be some flexibility. I I mean, I just got a request from my colleague for information, and I suggested, I told him what I was doing, suggested maybe it was somebody at DOG, but I don't even know that there is, even if you wanted to get an advisory from them. DOG's a Division of Open Government, the AG's office.
And Christine, just so I understand the benefit here, the issue here is there's a very limited number of people in the town hall. If you're relieved from having to post the announcements behind the town hall, that just makes your all life a lot easier if you can just do it online. That's really what we're trying to accomplish with this, right?
Correct.
I guess the only thing I would say is put some kind of a posting down there that alerts people to the fact that that's what's happening.
Yes, we'll do a full notification.
That's a good idea.
We'll announce it. We'll announce it on our dedicated website that I'm just going to continue to plug until the end of this meeting.
Okay. And then my next question is, and then at the end, when this is over, are we under an obligation to vote to reverse it, or is this potentially an administrative change that we electronically notify people of meetings?
It
No,
can-
I think you have to, the way the regs are, I think you at the very least have to vote to change the primary again.
No, I mean on postings on these meeting notices, Mark, if we vote to do this, are we under an obligation to change it back at some point?
You are not. If
Okay.
you decide that this is working better, we can leave it this way.
Okay.
Right.
And for those,
The only down thing about it is there's a provision in it right now that says if the system is down for, I think it's 6 hours, within 48 hours of a meeting, that meeting cannot take place. And everybody thought that was, oh, it's remote. Well, guess what? There were multiple towns affected by that within the last couple of months. So this issue did arise, and the way they got around it was they kind of punted on what the time was. It was actually down, and it came just short of the 6 hours. And the problem with that is the various land use boards and all, there are time constraints, and Board of Health as well, where if they don't take action, people get things by, or can get things by default. So if you have a critical meeting that's within a deadline, and then you can't have it because the system went down and the AG said you can't, and you have to repost it, you can end up with people getting approvals by default. So that's the only downside to this whole thing. We've asked the AG's office to address this issue, and maybe when all this clears, they'll realize that it's not a hypothetical, and and that they need to provide more flexibility.
okay.
Christine, just to clarify, does this mean we're going to stop posting on the bulletin board, or we're just going to make the website the primary location?
We're going to make the website the primary location. I will say that there are going to be times where we may not be able to get it out on the website within the 48 hours, but we will continue to post them there as people are in the town hall.
Mike, to your question, I'm going to suggest that what we're saying here is we are going to, for now, we're going to stop posting on that back bulletin board, because the only benefit of this is relieving the town employees of having to do that. Where I'm coming from is either we're using the back bulletin board to inform people and people know it's there, or we're not using it and they know it's not there and they have to find it online. I think a kind of catch-as-catch-can approach on the back bulletin board is the worst of all the events. So I would say right now, while we're in this circumstance, what we should be doing is saying we are not using the back bulletin board. We'll take Mark's advice to put a single posting on the back bulletin board that redirects people to the town website. And at the time that the smoke is cleared around this whole thing, then we can cross that bridge about how to either go back to what we were doing in light of the issues that Mark brought up, or how we decide this is a better way of doing business overall.
If the electronic is your official website, I don't have the regs in front of me, but I think you need to have a physical backup somewhere. If not on the board, like the police station or somewhere. That's just my recollection, that they took into account the fact that there are people who don't have access to electronic information and may have an interest in getting the notice. So
That is
somebody
correct.
needs, what?
You are correct. It will still need to be posted in the back. I'm reading it. We'll still need,
Even
we'll
if
still
we,
need to post a copy, but we can point people to the website for
Okay, all right.
stuff.
I mean, as I understand the import of it, you have to have one place that is the official posting. And so in other words,
Right.
right now it's the back bulletin board, meaning it's got to be posted on the back bulletin board 48 hours before the meeting. And as long as that happens, if it gets to the website 46 hours before the meeting, we're still fine. What we're proposing here is the website will become the official 48-hour plus. It's got to get on the website 48 hours before the meeting. We can post notices in 25 other different locations in addition to that, but we have to get it to the website within 48 hours. That's how I
Well,
understand it.
no, it's a little more complicated than that when you're talking the difference between electronic and physical posting, because as I said, they've recognized that not everybody has access to electronics, and therefore there is that requirement that there be a reliable posting, and I think it needs to be within the time period. But again, it is addressed in the current regulation.
So anyway, we're going to switch to the website as the main one and do our best to get it on the bulletin board as well.
That is my plan.
Yes.
so I'm getting fuzzier about what the overall benefit of this change is. I'm not against it. I'm okay with it, but the reason we're doing it is getting a little harder for me, unless we want to say, while this emergency is going on, we would prefer that people not go out to go to a back bulletin board. So we're shifting to encourage people to look online, but we're not saving the town hall physically present employees all that much work because we're still posting on the back.
Right.
Yes, but there have also been times recently where it's been, 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Well, actually, no, I've been here. So it's probably more like 11 o'clock at night where I've had a conversation with Carol. We need to schedule an emergency board of health meeting. There's an issue that's come up. I'm trying to give people as much notification as possible when we have to do those emergency meetings. So that would allow me to post that from home to notify everybody, and that would count for our posting for the emergency meeting. So it's really more in the emergency thing, but I would rather just pick one at this point, and I think the website is better at this point for us.
Yeah, I'm not trying to fight a problem. I'm just trying to understand what we're getting from it. And so I think if I understood Mark's comments, the trade-off we're making on that, which makes good sense to me that we would do this, Christine, so I'm not arguing against it, but the trade-off is we have some potential downside should the internet blow up. We could get ourselves a little screwed up if the notification process combined with an internet blow up that we haven't seen in the last several years could in fact derail us on something instead of making it easier. But it's worth the risk for the speed of posting that you can acquire.
I think
The other aspect in this particular case is all the pending legislation that's going to be taken up on Thursday addresses during this emergency stays of time periods and provides that nothing can happen by default just by reason of this emergency being in effect. So at least, again, during this period, you're protected.
Okay. So I'm ready.
I've made a motion, it's on the table.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, no, it's going to be a roll call. You got to do it, Pete. That's
Oh, Mr. Marcucci,
Yeah, aye.
Mr. Murphy,
aye.
me, yes.
Thank you. I just have a couple of more things. Falls under town administrator update. I just wanted to let everybody know our goal during all of this, besides protecting the health and safety and welfare of both our residents and our employees, has been a continuity of operations. And that's what we've been stressing for the last 3 weeks with our department heads and all of our basic functions. And that means sending out the tax bills, the water bills. We understand that, sending those out is stressful to people at a time like this when they're home. But unfortunately, we have to maintain, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we have to maintain the basic functions of government, and those are included in that. We are also allowing meetings to take place now that more of the departments and committees are becoming comfortable with Zoom and have done their trial runs. The Dale Street Building Committee is planning on meeting this week. They'll do it virtually as well. I believe they're posting for Thursday night. We had the warrant committee last night, which Mike, I think, went pretty well. And then we also have the townwide master plan, which is going to meet on Thursday as well. So we're starting to allow some of the committees to move forward, and we're putting out an advisory on the best way to do that for them using Zoom.
It looks like the townwide master planning committee is going to be trying to figure out how to hold their second public forum via some sort of online Zoom thing. So that'll be an interesting discussion on Thursday night.
Absolutely.
If anybody needs to reach me, legal services, particularly those related to advising municipalities, fall under the critical services, or essential services. So I expect to be in the office here in Medfield at least part of each day, so I can be reached here by either a voicemail on the telephone or email, as well as I have access to the Franklin email. For those of you who have that email address and are used to sending me emails in Franklin, I can get those here as well, so I'm available.
Thank you.
And I might just let you know, because you might be getting questions as this proceeds. Hopefully, we're ahead of the curve and things are not going to get worse. But if you actually get into individual quarantines and isolation and all that sort of thing, that falls under the Board of Health. They have all kinds of statutory authority to enforce those types of things. So I assume it would be the State Department of Health providing the guidance to the local Board of Health, but they have that going way back to various health outbreaks that have occurred in the history of Massachusetts that resulted in this legislation being already on the books.
Hey, Carol.
I'm happy to speak to that, Christine. I know I'm unmuted now.
For everybody who doesn't know, Carol Reed is the chairman of the Board of Health currently.
Yes. What we've been doing is, and I've been really grateful, I sent an email to the selectmen last week, and I appreciate all of Christine's work and the chief and Jeff's. What we have is the benefit of a board who has experience in medicine and public health. We've been just trying to supplement with resources and guidance. And every Tuesday, through my professional work and through this volunteer role, I participate in the Department of Public Health, local boards of health, 3 p.m. calls. So I'll be doing that again today. I share that information with Christine and Nancy Bonatti. And I will just say to what Mark said, yes, and we're fully aware of the scope and Mass General Law 111 and the powers of local boards of health to respond during an epidemic like this. You all know, because you're the town leaders, that the town contracts through the Natick Walpole VNA to do our infectious disease monitoring, and Christine may speak more to that, but we understand we work to support Christine and the contracted services, but yet do understand that as far as quarantine and health orders, we have the authority to have those enforced.
Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.
So that's all I have for formal agenda items. If the selectmen have anything to add to that.
So Christine, I would just like to put on, Gus, for the next regular meeting, which I guess will be next Tuesday,
Yes.
is to put on a discussion about how we can use the funds in our economic development fund to help support the businesses in Medfield that are obviously having a lot of challenges. So we may need to get some legal advice from Mark about what our options are. But I'd like to put that on as an agenda item for next week. And there's been inquiries from people about how, if there's any sort of people looking to donate to a town fund, how that might work as well. So I'd like to put that on for an agenda item for our next time.
Okay.
The Medfield Foundation is actually runs a fund for people in need in the town already, and they are planning on using that for anybody that is in need for the, under the virus issues that we're facing as well.
Hey,
And
Pete,
there are new donations to that as well. There's a new round of monies that are coming in.
Pete, how is that struck? You know, the one sensitivity that I have, first off, I'm delighted that the grassroots efforts that are going on are happening. But the one thing I started to wonder about, so there's the Medfield Foundation, there's the COVID fund. Is that the fund? Are there two funds under the Medfield Foundation, or is there just
The Medfield
one?
Foundation has run a fund that has been administered by the Youth Outreach and the UCC Church for years.
Yeah.
And it grew out of the Angel Run. That the Angel
Right.
Run was more profitable than needed to fund the scholarships that the Domachek family wanted to provide in 2012.
Right.
And so the additional monies raised from the Angel Fund went into that Angel Fund administered by the UCC pastor and the Youth Outreach Office. Medfield Foundation has no idea who gets those monies. We just turn the money over to that fund administered by those two entities. There is more fundraising that has been coming in recently because of the virus issues, and that is, I don't think it's going to be administered anything particularly separately from the Angel Run Fund, but I'm not positive, Gus.
Yeah, so I'll just suggest this for a topic for next week's meeting. And my issue is by no means any criticism whatsoever of the people that are raising money. But if I look at this from the standpoint of a Medfield resident who would like to help, what occurred to me is there's that fund that the Angel Run Fund, the COVID fund, which sounds like at the very least it's kind of a tagged contribution, maybe under the same fundraising bucket as the Angel Fund. We have the Medfield Food Cupboard. We have the Home Committee. And if I were to just look as a Medfield resident wanting to do something good, it seems there might be a way for us to be a little more coherent in either helping people understand how those funds each respectively support something, or how you can throw it at any of them and it'll all do good stuff and it's the same good stuff. It's the coherence of the messaging to people who would like to contribute that I think might help. And I don't know that we control it, but maybe if we could at least talk about it next Tuesday night, those people who do could help respond to the messaging being as coherent as it probably should be.
We could certainly invite Evan Weisenfeld, who's the president of the Medfield Foundation, to come in and explain the Angel Fund and the work that they're doing now with regard to the virus and the monies that are raised from that work and how that's being administered. But
yeah, and the kinds of questions I have is, so if somebody donates to that, is it helping the Medfield Food Cupboard, or, you know, depending on, it's like, I'm not sure who's getting help by which way. So if I wanted to contribute, I wouldn't exactly be sure which direction to send it based on the kind of help I'd like to provide.
Yep. So I would suggest that we invite Abby Marble to come as well, because she's highly involved in both the Medfield Foundation and the Food Cupboard.
Yep.
And she can explain to you how those interact with one another.
Okay. And Pete, you know more. The Home Committee is this mysterious committee for me. I know it exists. I know what it's for. But is there someone from the Home Committee that should come as well?
I can have Georgia Kalivas come.
You see what I'm getting at? It's just coherence is all I'm looking for. Okay.
Okay.
And that's next Tuesday, March 31st.
Correct. And which my plan is to do virtually, same as we are doing this meeting.
Yep.
I also need to, in speaking with the warrant committee last night, they would like to invite the Board of Selectmen to their meeting on Monday evening.
Next week.
Via Zoom as well.
Good.
Yes, 7 o'clock Monday. We don't have the agenda fully wrapped up yet, but the hope is that we will be able to reschedule the school committee and school department coming in as we were supposed to have done yesterday. So we're still in the process of getting that confirmed with the schools, but in the event that we're able to do that, would like to re-invite the Board of Selectmen as well.
Great. Okay.
I will post a meeting for the Board of Selectmen to be attending the warrant committee virtually.
Wonderful.
Okay.
This is going to turn into the preferred method of meeting. I can see in another couple of months. It's like this works well.
We'll have to get you a camera, Gus.
I have a camera. I just have to figure out, there's obviously some setting in Google in my normal way of not wanting to give those guys any more control over my privacy than I have to. I've obviously turned one switch too many that won't let, the camera says it's on, but it's not. Incidentally, before we close out, there are some people from the public that are on. Could we open it up to any questions, comments, or
Yes, just
make sure for all their time that they can speak if they want to?
give me 1 second. Okay. As long as you just please identify yourself before you speak so we can keep it in the record. Okay. That's, hold on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right, Martha. Sure you are there on the beach.
I wish I was.
Okay.
You weren't on
Everybody
that
should be-
spring break cruise ship that they were talking about, were you?
Thank goodness, no.
Okay, everybody should be unmuted if they would like to speak.
Hi, this is Bill Massaro. I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing. I think the concept is interesting. I obviously don't have a camera, which is probably just as well. I haven't shaved in 3 days. But again, I want to thank you all for the work that you're doing here. One question for the warrant committee or Christine: at some point, will there be draft copies of the warrant articles available? So far, all we have is the list.
Yes, we're working on that. We had some changes and we had several articles drop off last night. So we'll work on putting a new draft out and get it out to everybody. I just want to thank Bill. I like continuity of operations, and for the record, Bill was pretty much the first one in this meeting before any of the selectmen. So for me, it's pretty calming.
Well, thank you. Again, I'm impressed. And Nick, I know you're doing a lot of work behind the scenes here. Don't let Christine take all the credit. You're doing. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Bill, even though you weren't at our last meeting for the first time in a decade, probably, you did get mentioned there, if you haven't seen it on TV yet.
No, I watched. I did watch.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to say thank you all. So you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks, Martha.
Okay.
We need a roll call vote to adjourn.
Hannah, I'll hit her up and up.
I would make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Mr. Marcucci,
Aye.
Mr. Murby,
Bye.
me, yes.